Hi and welcome to the third video of the blog project with NestJS and Angular. And this time we will expand the logic a little bit more than before. So one thing that we are doing is we expand the user model with the properties email and password. We will hash the password before saving it in the database. We will add JWT Authentication for login endpoint and add this to the code. So now we have the video structure. This will be like in the videos before. We will first have a look at the video outcome. What will we do? We will look at the Postman requests if they are working and what will be created. Then we will check the written user story for the outcome, and then we will implement the user story and close it. And right at the end we will have a short look at video 4. So there will be coming something about role and protecting endpoints with JWT and with roles permission sets. So let's have a quick look at the video outcome. We are expanding our user model or entity here. We have added the email property, the password property. We added a new endpoint for login. We have a new Auth module, which provides us with hashing a password, generating a JWT and signing it with a payload. And we can have a quick look at our endpoint. So we have still our get all users. And here you can see it's returning the email, but not the password, because we don't want to return the password hash to the user. We can add a new user, and you see we also have here the password, but in return it's not. So the single user is still there. We can update one user, and there is so just updated the name and the username, not the email and the password, because this is a bit more complicated, as explained in the video later. We have a new login method where we get in return an access token, and if you can copy this access token and pass it in JWT.io, you see that this is a valid thing, and it is we have payload with our user object, and we have the time when it was generated and when it's expiring, and you can pass your JWT secret in here when it's verified. So I already did it, so this is verified JWT token. So let's start. This video is a bit different to the last one because I already wrote a story to save us all some time. In this video we are going to add our JWT, we will check the password, we will log in endpoint, and then in the next video we will extend it our endpoints with guards, with custom, has role annotation, and with a JWT guard some endpoints. So in this video I wrote here, as a user I want to be able to authenticate myself so I can perform data protected, so like in the next story requests. And the acceptance criteria is we want to have a new endpoint with post login, and there we want to check our password, and if our user exists. We want to expand our user model obviously with email and password. We want to expand our create endpoint because now we have to hash the password, and we want to always store the email in lowercase in our database and the password as a hashed value. And we can probably add that we want to add Auth module for this. So we have everything handled in our module. So since we're doing this now, we can add this to doing and we can start. So we are now back in our project from the last videos. And so the first thing that we want to do is, since we are using git flow, we want to go to a new branch, and we can just go with the command git flow feature start. And now we name the feature like video 3. And this will create a new feature branch based on develop. So you see it here, we are now on our feature branch. And we want to finish it, we can just use this command later. So now we are here on our blog folder, and we want to cd in to our API. And then we want to create our Auth module, and for this we can use the nest CLI. And we can just say nest generate module out. And what this does for us is we have a Auth module on the same path at the user module, and it will also be imported here in our app.module. So what we want to do now is, because for the JWT we also need a secret, we add this to our .env file. So you see we have our database URL, and here you have to insert your own database URL, and we need our JWT secret. I will explain later why we need this. And for example, we can just go with like a random string at the beginning. This will be enough for this video. You can make it a little bit more complicated later. Next, we want to add our JWT functionality or our dependencies for this, so we have to import them, and for this we can just use like the documentation of NestJS. And here it says we can import a NestJS JWT package that helps with the JWT manipulation as that's here. So we can go into it and look at it. And we can just install it. We want to save it in our dependencies. And now we can use it here in our module. We have some imports. This. And here we want to use our JWT module. We have to wait a little bit. And we want to use, so we need to import it. Maybe it's a little bit slow, so we can do it manually. From JWT. And we want to use register async. And we want to pass in some options. We will have an imports also, and there we need our config module from NestJS config. And what's saying here? Next, we want to inject our config service, which is also from the NestJS config module, or from NestJS config. And then we can make a factory and go async and inject here our config service. So this is basically just another way to get to our .env variable, so we can do it in two ways. I will show both. So the way that we are using is we have to provide for our JWT module a secret. And we could do it like before. We can use the process.env, and we can say, like we named it, JWT secret. It's like this. Or what we can do now is we can say config service .get, and we can pass in the JWT secret. So it's basically making a getter around our .env file, our properties. And the second thing that we need are our sign options, so we can pass in, like here, what we can need is like we want to expire in, let's say, 100 seconds. So now we are able to generate JWT. The next thing that we want to add is our service, which we can use in our other module. So in the user module, we will need to have access to our Auth Service. So there we can hash password, we can use the JWT and so on. So what we can do now is we can use again the CLI from Nest to generate our service. And we can say Nest generate service. And we want to go into the Auth module. And then we want to have it like under our Auth Service. So we will have to rename it again, the folder, but that's not a problem. So we have our Auth Service, and we want to rename this folder to services. Probably there are coming some more. You can see now we have it here in our providers already. And before we add here like everything that we need, we can just have a quick look at what a JWT token actually is. And for this we can go to the official documentation from JWT.io. This is the official site. So JWT is an open standard for a compact and self-contained way for securely transmitting information between parties. So you can sign it with a secret, like we did, or public private key, and so on. So we can use it for authorization, for information exchange, and it has a specific structure. It always has a header, a payload, and a signature, which are divided by a dot. So the XXX is the header, then we have the payload, and then we have the signature. So in the header, this just says what is it and how is it the algorithm. So it's here 256, and the type is a JWT. So in the payload we can here pass in everything that we want. For example, our expiration time, or our user, or like here our name, if we are an admin here. And then this is base64 URL encoded. Yeah. And then at the last part we have our signature. And there we verify that all this message or this token that we sent wasn't changed. So what we can do probably is you can later do this ourselves. You can pass in the token here, and you can see that this is working. If you just change one character of it, it will automatically show that it's that we changed something and it's not valid anymore. So this is just like a little introduction, and so now we can use it. And for this we need here our constructor in our service, and we want to pass in our JWT service, and we can import this from our nest.js JWT. So we need some methods. The first one is we want to generate a JWT. Then we also want to hash a password later, because we don't want to store a plain password in the database and just in base that where we lose some data, or someone is stealing data or whatever. And at last we also need to compare passwords method. So if the user is logging in, we have to compare the hashes, the one that's stored in the database and the one that we generate from the password the user sent. And if they are the same, then we can log in and generate the JWT. So all of these are observables. And this is of type string, because we will return just the JWT, which is a string. And the same is here the password. We are just returning the password hash. And we will return here also an observable. And we have to look it up, or we have to code it, and I don't know what we will return here. So in the generate JWT method, we want to have a payload that we will use to sign it with. So we can say this is an object that we will get, and we will just return this JWT service dot sign. And we want to pass in our payload, so this is our user basically. And so we can make it a little more specific. And we can say user, and we can spare this, I think. So now it's saying we want to return observable, but we are here not returning, so can we use what was the other one, sign async. So this is a promise, and we can again use this, and we have to import this. So then we want to hash our password, and for this we need something to hash it. And for this I want to use bcrypt. And we have here just we can install it first. and then we can use it. So what we want to do is we want to return something from a type string. Can do this also here. And the bcrypt, and this should be imported like here. We can say bcrypt dot hash, and then we can give in the password. So what we will get here is we want to have our password, which is a string, and then we want to hash it. So we pass it in, we give it in here, the password, and the salt rounds is the second parameter, and this will be like 12 rounds, so it will be very fast. And then in the compare passwords, we get 2 passwords, and we want to compare them, or we get a hash and password. So we have the new password from type string, and the second parameter we get is password hash, and now we want to compare them if they're completely the same. And for this we can also use bcrypt has a compare method, and we can use it. And we can say here bcrypt dot compare, I think. And then we can say our new password against the password hash. We have to import the auth. So this should be all methods that we will need in this first step. And now we can also add here, we are returning the same as here, any or a boolean. And before we can use it or the service in our other module, in the user module, we have to export it. So we can go here like exports, and we can say we want to export our Auth Service. Now we can go into our user module and implement everything. So we have to import here first our Auth module, so we can use the service, and then we have to think what are we adding to our user models. So in our interface we are adding, of course, an email for the user, which is of type string, and we also are adding the password property, which is also of type string. So since we added them here, we also want to add them in our user entity, and we make it in the same spot. So in the last 2 pieces we have first our email of type string, and it is of course a column, and a second we have our password, which is also a string, and it's also a column. And we said we always want to have the email stored in lowercase in the database, so we can do use the annotation before insert from nest.js, or from type ORM, I think, yeah, type ORM. And we can say email to lowercase, and this is this.email gleich is email to lowercase. So this will now always be stored in lowercase in the database or before you make anything, so it's easy to search for it. Now we can go to our user service, and we have to modify like our create method, because right now we are just storing the user in the database, but what we want to do is we want to hash the password also. So what we can do now is we can return, we need our Auth service, so we have to inject it. We can say private Auth service, and then we can use it here. And we have here our hashPassword method, and we can insert here our user password, and then we can pipe the outcome, and we want to do a switch map to it, and we will receive a password hash, which is of type string, and we want to return from this user repository as before. Don't save. Not our user like here, but now we want to create a new user. So we can say const new user. And here we can use our user entity to generate this. And then we set all the properties. So email, or we can begin with name, is user.name, new user dot username is user.username. We have new user dot email is user.email, and at last our new user dot password is not our user password but our password hash that we got from our Auth service. And so we want to store here our new user. And now we can make it so that we return this user. But if we do this like this, we will return the whole user. We don't want to give the password hash outside of the application. So we can also pipe this and map it. And what we will receive here is a user from the type user. And we have to remove the password from the payload. So we have our password, and we can just rip it apart. And then we return our result. And we can also just implement a catch error, and then we throw an error. So I think it's not knowing these, so we have to import them. Don't know why it's not working. We don't use this, and we use this. Catch error. Why it's not? So we have our. So we have to import them by hand. Switch map, and throw catch error from, I think it's RxJS operators. So this should now all be fine, and we can remove our comment here. Now we can modify or change the next method, and like we did here, we have to remove the password in everywhere. So we can just comment this out again, and we can say return from. We can let this. We can just pipe it. And then we map our user, which is from the type user. And we can say const password. And here we have our result. And then we return our result. And this we have to do also with our find all, which is a bit more complicated, but we can also just make it here. We can pipe it, and we map our user. and we return the user without the password. So now we have here an array. I think this should be this. And so from users we have to remove all so we can make for each, and we can say function and we can remove it from every, or we can delete it from every single one, and then we can return it. Maybe this should work. So we can Google it. Remove property from array object. So we can make it like this, and let's see if it's work. I'm not quite sure. The delete one method we do not need to change, but the update one method, because if you think about it, we don't want that the user can just change the password by sending an API request, a simple one, or change the email, because normally, like for the password, you would do something like you request resetting your password, then you will receive an email to make sure that it's really the user asking, and in this email there is a link with a key or with a JWT or whatever, something to identify the user, and then you can copy paste it into your browser, and we can use this to identify you and then you can enter your new password. So we don't want to do this here so easily. So what we can do is we delete our email and our password from it, so it will not be changed or updated. And yeah, of course, the same as with the email. If the email is changeable, so it can be changed so easy, it's not good, because the email is the last thing that's able to identify who is the user really. So, but now we need new methods. We need our login method. And here we will receive a user, and we want to return an observable. And why we are returning a string is because we are returning the JWT token. So this is just a string. And for this we can write our own method, and we can say we want to validate a user, and by email and by password. So we have an email, which is a string, and we have a password, which is a string. And we of course return an observable of the type user. And herefore we want to find the user by email. So I think we don't have this method yet. So what we can do is findByMail. And here we want to have our email, which is a string, and we return an observable of type user. And here we can say we want to return from this user repository dot find one, and we can pass in the email. And then we will return the user object. So we can use this now here. We can use this findByMail, and we can pass in our email. And we are returning, or we are getting our user. Now we can use again our switch map. And we have here our user. And for this we want to use our, so we can make it a little bit easier, our Auth Service. And here we have our method comparePasswords. So now we received here our password from the user, from the input, from the login, and we have the stored hash password hash from the database. So we want to compare them now. And the first is the new password, and the second one is the password hash. So we pass in the password and the user password. And then we can pipe this result again and map the outcome. And here we will receive a boolean, and this can just be called match. And we can say if match. We want to return the user, so we have to again remove the password from it. And we return our result. And in the else, we want to throw, let's say, an error. So now we have, very simply, we find our user by email. We get the whole user object, then we use our comparePassword method from bcrypt or our Auth Service here to compare the new password or the password from the user with the password hash that's stored in the database. And then we will return receive a boolean that's true or false. If it's true, we will return our user object without the password. And if it's false, we will just return or throw an error. So we can use this now in our login method. And we can say we want to return this validateUser. And what we pass in is our user.email and our user password. So here we can make a switch map again. And we can just say if we receive a user, if we have a user object, we can generate a JWT service. So we can say return this Auth Service, and we can use our first method there, generate JWT. And as a payload, we want to have our user. And we can pipe this and map the JWT. So we return this string. So we can do this and make it like this. In our else case, we will return just some word, so if we get an error or something, wrong credentials. So the last thing now is to add these in the controller. So we have here our controller, and we have still our create route, and maybe we can just here make it a little bit fancier, and we can say map user, and we return the user. But if we catch an error, then we want to return our error method. So we have to make it an observable, And we can just say error is error, error.message. It's not here, so we are returning a user, and now we also can return an object. So we will return the error message that we made here, that we will get here. Then the next thing is we will need a login method. So this will also be a post, so it's protected. We can just say it's a login. We can call the method login, and we need our body. And here we are just getting our user object, and we are returning an observable, and we return here like an object first. And then we can use our user service. And we use our login method. And here we need our user, and we pipe it. And we map our JWT, which is a string. And we return, so we actually don't need this, access token JWT. So what does it want? Okay, so this is working. And we need another bracket here. Format it, and this can be here. Here, so I think this should be it. So since the code is now done, we can just start and look if everything works fine. If not, we have to fix the mistakes. So we can just run it our npm start script as before, or in the last videos, and can look if there's an error already coming up or not. So this is all working. We are mapping all the routes. We have here our new login route. And now we can test it with Postman if everything works as expected. So we have our get all users. And this should return empty array because the database is empty at the moment. So we can add a new user, and you remember now before we had just name and username, and if we send it, it says we need more arguments. So what we need to do here is we have to add our email, and let's just say it's thomas@test.de, and we have our password, and we can just make it very simple, say simple password, and now we can send it again, and now it should be created in CSC since we were like here in our user service, removing the password here from it, so it's not getting returned. So we just return the name, the username, the email, and the ID. So we want to save this request here, so we have it here. Then we have our get single user by ID, so we can check. We have ID 2. If it's working, we get it, and the password is also not there. We want to update 1, so we can use updated name for it, for example, and updated username. And like when we see here, we get all our users. We have here this user we created, and the name is Thomas Test, and username is Thomas1. If we make this put request now, we can see we have like affected. So we should make it to the correct ID. So affected 1. If we get this again, you now see we have updated name and updated username. And if we make it for 2 and we add email, and we can say should not work, And the same for password, because like you remember, we made it delete here. We deleted these, so they are not getting updated. And so if we make this request, so now we have here our 2. So here we need a comma. And so we update it. And so now when I send here, we should have 2 and the email should stay the same. And you see the emails stayed the same and the rest changed. Now we can make this so, and we can save this. So you have to remember change this ID to what you need. And we also can create. Add new user and create user is actually the same. I don't know what I did here. So but we can use this and test our login method. And we can use as body our email and password. And we can make a post, and now it should return our JWT token. You can see here we are having our access token. And now if I copy it and I paste it in the JWT.io as we have seen at the start of the video, we can have a look at it. So you see I pass it in here, we have our header, it's JWT, the algorithm, then we have here our payload where we have our user. This was what we set it up here in our Auth module, and in our Auth Service we said we will sign it with our user that we get here. We have our IEAT, and this is when it was created, and it will expire in 100 seconds, so you see 1.5 minutes or something. And like we have here an invalid signature, and now I can copy my secret from our .env file, so you have to, and if I paste it here in here, you see now the signature is verified because it has the right secret. So at last we want to rename this, not as createUser but login, and to save it to the YouTube blog, and this can be deleted. So the last thing that we can do is we export it here, and we have also already added it here, and we will just replace this. Collection. So now this is updated with all the requests. So now we can commit our changes on this branch, and we use for the message the title of our story. So it's V-03, and what we did was we added our Auth module, we added the login route or our login endpoint, and we added the JWT and the password hashing. So then we can push this to the branch. So we can copy this and set our upstream branch to GitLab, of course. And now we can use git flow to finish our feature. And now what this does is it will merge our feature V-03 back into the develop, and you can see it now here what all changed. Now you see the feature branch was merged back into develop, and it was deleted locally, and it has also been deleted remotely. And now we are back on branch develop, so we have to push this also. So this is the last thing that we're doing in this video. We can have a short look here on the branch master. We are still on the last commit, so video 2, that we made. But if we switch to develop, we will see the last commit from video 3 here, and we can see that everything that we did here, like adding our module, our out module is here, so you can check it out. And the second thing that we need to do is we have here our blog project. We can check the story, and we can see that we created a new endpoint, log in, this is done, and we check the password. Then we also expanded our user model with email and password. We expanded the create endpoint. We are storing the email always in lowercase in our database. And we added an out module for this, so we can save this. And we can move it also to done. So the last thing that we are really doing now is looking at the next video in the series. And there we are adding the property role to our user. And then we protect some endpoints. For some you will just need a valid JWT, and for some you will need the correct role. And for this we make a custom implementation of the add_has_role annotation or guard and use this. So it will check the JWT, get the user, and will check is he having the right role to access this resource. And then we will do some minor fixes and changes in our code base, and we will add a paging or paginating to the get all request. So you can like paging, like you have 10 users and you have another 10 users. So it's easier if you later will show them in the front end if you make it in a table or something, so you can paginate between the pages. So thanks for watching.